NATO member Poland says a Russian cruise missile briefly violated its airspace on Sunday morning. Warsaw summoned officials from the Russian embassy to demand an explanation. Poland said the missile entered its territory as it was firing at targets in western Ukraine. The city of Lviv, close to the Polish border, came under heavy attack. Explosions also rocked the Ukrainian capital. Officials say air defenses shot down roughly a dozen missiles in and around Kyiv. Residents were told to remain in shelters. Poland says it would have shot down the Russian missile that breached its airspace if there had been any indication that it was heading towards a target in Poland. Here's what the defense minister had to say.
At 4:43 a.m., there was a violation of Poland's airspace by one of the Russian missiles. The object flew into Poland's airspace near the town of Oserdów in Lublin province and stayed on our territory for 39 seconds. It flew about 1,000 to 2,000 meters into our territory. At all times, the object was monitored by Poland's radio tracking systems. Beforehand, as I said, all strategic security measures were taken.
Marina Miron is a military analyst with King's College London, and she joins us now from Munich. Good to see you as always, Marina. Is it reasonable to believe this was simply an accident, or is the trajectory of such missiles precisely predetermined?
Good day, Michael. Well, what we have to understand, there is a significant difference between cruise missiles and ballistic missiles. Cruise missiles fly at low altitudes. They are essentially, if you wish, like an unmanned aircraft. And so they have different guidance systems on board, such as terrain mapping, satellite navigation, and they have a degree of maneuverability in order to remain undetected, so to fly beneath the radar. So here is a possibility, while violation of airspace is a violation, regardless of whether it was 39 seconds or 3 minutes or whatever it might have been, the thing here which we have to understand, the missile might have tried to evade certain air defenses located in Ukraine and therefore ventured briefly into the Polish territory. So you cannot say that you can completely determine the course of the missile.
Understood. So let me ask you this. According to the Polish army, the Russian missile violated Polish airspace for just under 40 seconds and flew 2 kilometers into Polish territory. How serious a violation is that?
Well, that's dependent on the Polish side to determine. Of course, and we have seen the Polish defense minister saying they knew that the missile wasn't targeting anything on the Polish territory. They were monitoring several missiles, I think up to 10 missiles, going to Lviv. Therefore, they knew that this missile wasn't an attack on Poland per se. And as I said, the missiles have small room of maneuverability in order to evade air defenses. Therefore, it is to assume that it wasn't an intentional incursion into Polish airspace and was not presenting any direct threat to Poland being a NATO member, which is why Poland didn't shoot it down.
You rightly bring up the fact that they were monitoring several missiles, multiple missiles. Briefly walk us through what might have happened, the general procedure, if you will, on the Polish side, if the radars suddenly reveal a Russian missile approaching.
Well, if such a missile approaches, obviously the Polish forces are put on high alert, the Air Force gets activated, and the missile will be monitored very closely because there can also be a failure where a missile falls on the Polish territory, for instance, or whatever it can be. For instance, Ukrainian air defense is trying to shoot down that missile while it is in the Polish airspace. So there can be multiple scenarios. Therefore, it's understandable that once you detect such a missile flying, it's a hostile missile, you put your forces on high alert and get your aviation up in order to monitor the situation and prevent potential escalation.
Marina, here's the big question I'm sure everybody is wondering. Russian missiles have crossed into Polish airspace before. This has raised the alarm for NATO, of which, of course, Poland is a member. What mechanisms are in place to prevent Poland, and with it NATO, from being drawn into a war?
Well, in terms of the mechanisms, and we have seen it at work right now, the statements of the Polish defense minister acknowledging the fact that this missile was not targeting anything in Poland. Therefore, no active action or proactive action has been taken in order to shoot down the missile. If Poland had shot down the missile, that might have caused a chain reaction and, of course, a response from the Russian side. In this case, I do not think that there can be any response except for demanding an explanation from the Russian side. So you would likely use diplomatic mechanisms in order to clarify the situation rather than using any sort of kinetic force. And I think the Russian side and the NATO side, they're both very careful here.
Marina Miron from King's College London, thanks so much for your time and, as always, your perspective.
Thank you for having me.